będziemy mieli przyjemność połączyć się ze Stanami Zjednoczonymi. Wykład krótki będzie w języku angielskim. Przedstawi pan, nasz ojciec, profesor Michael Agliardo, który pracował na Loyola University w Chicago. Obecnie jest profesorem nadzwyczajnym praktyki na Wydziale Socjologii i w Instytucie Życia Kościelnego imienia McGraffa w Uniwersytecie Notre Dame. Posiada doktorat z socjologii na Uniwersytecie Kalifornijskim w San Diego, a także ukończył Western Jesuit School of Theology. Uzyskał tytuł licencjata z historii średniowiecznej na Uniwersytecie Harvarda ze specjalizacją dotyczącą Chin. I to, co jest też istotne, będąc socjologiem, zwraca baczną uwagę na historię oraz na sposób, jaki z tej historii wyłania się znaczenie. Więc myślę, że to będzie bardzo interesujące. Welcome, Professor Agliardo, welcome to our conference. It's a pleasure and honor to have you on board. And hope it's a good time to say a few words about the topic, which is gift of dilemma, the varied reception of Laudato Si in Poland. Dar czy dylemat, zróżnicowanie recepcji encykliki Laudato Si w Polsce. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your introduction. It's very much an honor to be with you here today, if only by a Zoom, and greetings from the United States. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference, especially Father Maciej Tomaszewski and Father Robert Wawer, for their kind invitation to be part of this gathering. Today, I would like to speak on the reception of Laudato Si, especially in Poland. In the remarks, I will say a few words about how I approach my sociological research in general. Then I will talk about the design of my research in Poland, and I will offer a series of vignettes concerning the reception of Laudato Si in various places in Poland. And finally, I will conclude with a few observations based on my research so far. In terms of methodology, I am a cultural sociologist, a designation which is unfortunately a bit ambiguous. In my case, it means that I locate social phenomena in their linguistic, symbolic, and/or historical contexts as an essential part of my analysis. This approach to sociology might better be termed hermeneutic sociology. It takes seriously the subjectivity of social actors and their construction of meaning. After Laudato Si was published, it provoked no small reaction in the United States. People were divided. Some criticized Pope Francis for straying too far from what ought to be the central concerns of the Church. Others applauded this Catholic contribution to a discussion that otherwise was dominated by secular perspectives. How people viewed Laudato Si seemed to vary tremendously. At the same time, in my memory, there has never been another church document promoted quite so intentionally. Since the document was new, I realized that trying to measure actual impact would be premature. How people view and apply such broad principles in their own circumstances will vary. It was not as if one could really count how many aluminum cans people recycled before Laudato Si came out and then afterward to measure its significance. It takes time for church teaching to become integrated into the life of the church and the larger community, and in turn to transform these. I secured a major grant and developed a research design for the reception of Laudato Si in the United States. I was then encouraged to expand this research and so launched a 5-country comparative study. And Poland was one of those countries. Why Poland? Well, let me tell you, if I had known how difficult the Polish language is, perhaps I would have reconsidered. I told people that I was going to this city, and they said, "Oh, you're going to Wrocław." No, I said it's Wrocław. Yeah, Wrocław. So Polish does present certain challenges to the American tongue. Anyway, I originally thought that Laudato Si would get a grand reception in Poland since it is such a Catholic country. When I found out that its reception might be a little bit more complicated, I became even more interested. So, what is my data? What is my research design in brief? Well, I conduct interviews, I collect background material on the people and organizations that I visit, and I pursue extensive media scans. In Poland, in addition to exploring the reception of Laudato Si at the national level, I chose 4 cities so as to be able to observe how Laudato Si was engaged on the ground. Those cities, Warsaw, Krakow, Miejsce, and Wrocław. At each site, I seek interviews from members of the Catholic Church, the Catholic community, other faith communities, and civil society. They also include the occasional political figure and businessman. Point is to conduct strategic sampling so as to gain a variety of perspectives on the relevance of an engagement with Laudato Si in different settings, whether positive or negative. In some societies, Laudato Si fits well. For example, in the Philippines, after President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law in 1972, some priests and sisters provided safe havens for those who were wrongly accused of being communist insurgents. Members of religious orders in particular were exposed to liberation theology, which is integral to the perspective of Laudato Si, and they were sympathetic. In the 1990s, bishops of the Philippines promised to make theirs a church of and for the poor. Filipinos also see themselves as victims of climate change. As a result, when Laudato Si was released, it was as if the document, written expressly for them. If we think of society as a jigsaw puzzle with many pieces already in place, then consider Laudato Si to be one additional puzzle piece to fit into the mix. The jigsaw puzzle of the Philippines, it fits perfectly. In Poland, for Laudato Si to fit, some of the other puzzle pieces might have to be rearranged. I will return to this point after reviewing some instances of engagement with Laudato Si. The first of these is the crucial site of engagement at the SEM in July and October of 2015. There was a conference organized by the Academy of Social and Media Culture at Turon, which was founded by Father Tadeusz Rydzyk, director of Radio Maria. Papers were delivered by lay and religious experts, including a Polish priest serving on the Pontifical Council for Culture. The official conclusion for this conference notes that Laudato Si is addressed to all humanity. Then it reads, following the Holy Father, we emphasize the importance of sustainable development of the world. That was curious because the document emphasizes a different concept, namely integral ecology. The concept of sustainable development has long been cited as fundamentally ambiguous, a hybrid, co-joining the ecological notion of sustainability with the economic imperative to develop. As a result, it's difficult to pin down its meaning. The meaning can vary widely depending on who wields the term. Then the conclusion declares that at the center of the concept of sustainable development is man and his right to work, to support his family, and to develop economically in countries in accordance with UN conventions. No further mention is made of Laudato Si until the end of the document. the rest of the conclusion to this conference consists of affirmations of traditional Polish practices already in place, criticism of impositions from outside that are based on a poor understanding of local realities, and policy recommendations in accord with a certain political platform. The title of the conference mentions climate change. The only discussion of this issue is the assertion that EU climate and energy package offered Poland is unfair and must be renegotiated. The document then ends with, participants of the conference hope that the conclusions compiled above will provide a basis for the discussion of the concept of sustainable development described in the encyclical of the Holy Father Francis. It is difficult to tell whether the authors of this conclusion actually even looked at Laudato Si, which makes it clear, the document makes clear that God, not man, is at the center. Certainly, the people who wrote this conclusion did not engage its contents in any meaningful way. People I spoke with then explained to me that Poland has long been caught between Germany and Russia, each of which has tried to impose its culture and priorities on the Polish people. According to these informants, now the European Union is attempting to impose a liberal secular agenda on Poland. And one rubric under which this imposition proceeds is environmentalism. The Catholic Church in Poland has long served as a bastion for safeguarding the national community. Some people that the Holy Father has taken up environmentalism in such a strong way represents a crisis of sorts because it could undermine reams of discourse criticizing uninformed liberal secular environmentalism. According to some observers, then, this conference at the SEM was a way to pretend to engage the document, but in fact to reframe it as nothing more than an affirmation of what Poland is already doing. In my next remarks, I rely on reports from Radio Maria and its affiliated newspaper, Październik, which I have reviewed in translation. These have both provided relatively neutral or even pleasant coverage of Laudato Si. At the same time, these outlets repeatedly attack ecologism, identified as a false, materialistic, neo-pagan, anti-Christian ideology, promotes an agenda completely at odds with humanistic, Christ-centered vision of the Church. At one conference of the Academy of Social and Material Culture, Father Tadeusz Gus denounced green ecology, arguing that this ideology, and I say this with full responsibility, is a variety of green Nazism, with the only difference from the German Third Reich being that now not even one race, the German race, has the right to continue to exist. In January 2020, when commenting on animal rights activists, Father Rydzyk himself noted that Poland stopped the Red Army at the Vistula, but who would stop this continuation of Marxism? He then denounced Greta Thunberg as a child who should be learning, not manipulating other children to make mischief. Father Rydzyk himself makes clear that he sees Poland caught up in a culture war, a contest over the fundamental values that should guide the nation. How does this affect the reception of Laudato Si? In fact, Laudato Si does not fit easily within the battle lines that had been drawn before its publication. While Radio Maria and its associated persons and institutions have been careful not to directly denounce Laudato Si, they clearly harbor deep concern that the document could be taken up by people on the other side of the battlefront. Now, if I may interject a comment of my own, The kind of rhetoric which we saw in extreme cases certainly lacks sufficient nuance. There are indeed secularists who are out to bring down the Catholic Church in every corner of the world. We see that. However, general comments about ecologism and an ecological conspiracy bent on world domination amount to sensationalism and irresponsible fear-mongering. At this juncture, I'd like to cite the experience of a woman who, together with her husband, runs a community-based farm in southeastern Poland, a farm where people can learn about principles of ecology and spirituality. This woman is a faithful Catholic, and she has spoken about ecology with her parish priest on numerous occasions. He even visited to learn about her farm. After the visit, he toned down some of the rhetoric in his homilies denouncing ecologism. But then a month before our interview, he once again attacked ecologists as anti-Polish neo-Nazis. This left our woman farmer hurt and bewildered because, as she explained, not everyone promoting a simpler lifestyle and care for God's creation is a neo-Nazi. One of the groups that enthusiastically welcomed Laudato Si to Poland is Greenpeace Poland. Now, if any group fits the stereotype of ecologism, this is where we should look. Indeed, Greenpeace is a foreign transplant organization, and it is secular in the sense that it is not religiously affiliated. However, I will note that the head of Greenpeace in Southeast Asia, Yeb Sanyo, a friend of mine, who I also interviewed for over 3 hours, was very clear that in his part of the world, an organization that is deaf to religion is deaf to the voice of the people. Yeb himself is a committed Catholic and a member of the board of Laudato Si movement. I will now quote a staffer at Greenpeace Poland. So in June, when Encyclical was published, of course, the first thing we did, we read it. And we were surprised when we saw what's in it. It was like Greenpeace words. Part of the Greenpeace agenda was there. We were really surprised and really happy to see that there is this strong message from Pope Francis saying we need to take urgent measures to tackle climate change. It's very urgent, and we have to do something about it. So here is someone at Greenpeace confirming that Laudato Si does support part of their agenda. She added that the vast majority of people in Poland are Catholic, and it would be a very useful document for encouraging the country to transition from coal to renewable energy. At that time, Greenpeace Poland was also pursuing campaigns to save the Białowieża forest, to protect bees, and to reduce toxic waste that pollutes Poland's rivers. The staffer acknowledged that the energy transition faces both political and cultural hurdles. As has been echoed to me by numerous interviewees, energy is the basis for development, and coal is the basis for Poland's energy self-reliance. In addition, workers in the coal industry, in Silesia, cultural icons, people who sacrificed to provide for their families and to meet the needs of the nation. At the same time, this staffer noted that the bishops in Silesia are actually quite concerned about pollution from coal plants. Moreover, according to her observations, she did not notice any criticism in Poland when the Vatican invested in solar energy. Instead, she noted that parishes in Carpathia did the same, and that the Polish episcopate had announced plans to build a solar power plant. The staffer is Catholic. She notes that Franciscan Father Stanisław Jaromi and Bishop Grzegorz Risch were strong voices in favor of Laudato Si. But she was disappointed that there were not more church leaders speaking out. She understood that there seemed to be two main groups in the church, one more traditionalist and one more intellectual and open to Laudato Si. But she did not understand or follow their positions very closely. Since I did conduct the interviewing clerics, if this staffer held strong secularist views, he might have decided to hide them. However, my sense was that she was very appreciative to have this opportunity to speak with someone in the church who listened to her concerns. One of the most delightful interviewees I met was the woman behind a publicity stunt that garnered a certain amount of media attention. Cecilia Malik posed a group of mothers nursing their children on dead tree stumps that highlight the stark contrast between nurturing life and cutting it down. Ms. Malik is a photographer, an artist, and an activist for nature. For example, to bring attention to trees being cut down in urban settings, she produced a series of photographs where she climbed a different tree each day for an entire year. She also told me about a development project along the riverbank in Krakow that she opposed, lamenting that other people do not protest to prevent the sale of public land in such a beautiful, socially significant, and ecologically sensitive location. She said, "No patriots."
Michael, can you
Yes.
speed up your presentation because we are out of the time, so maybe move to the conclusion. We will go through your text in a speed reading after your conclusion.
Very good. I'll finish with Cecilia and then jump to the conclusion.
Good.
Okay. So the point is here, she clearly has a strong sense of the common good and considers herself a patriot. Now, just to jump to the conclusion here, I'll skip over, and also I just want to point out she was an artist whose family is very religious and made religious art for churches and communities around the country. I'll skip over our good city councilor in Katowice and just offer a few observations. And again, as you say, you have the text. So I have 8 observations that emerged from this study. First is that it is no secret that the pontificate of Pope Francis is quite challenging for many in the Polish church. The second is Polish people in general are wary of outsiders imposing their views, and rightly so. The arrogance of secular elites in Europe is legendary. Third point is, while at the outset Laudato Si fell on deaf ears, there is increasing engagement with the document. That said, the Polish church clearly wants to engage the document on its own terms. However, perhaps it is a gift that Laudato Si does not easily fit into the Polish jigsaw puzzle. Since it comes from the Holy Father, it cannot easily be dismissed, and therefore it represents a challenge which may be a healthy one. As we saw in the case of Cecilia Malik, I didn't get to talk about her children, but she said that they're not going to church anymore because they don't feel that the church speaks to them or is in touch with reality. Now, that's not true for everybody in Poland, but it certainly is true for many of the young people, and maybe Laudato Si is the kind of a challenge that could help people to rethink how to re-engage so as to reach young people or people at the margins. And certainly, people with the creativity of Cecilia Malik have talents for reaching them that sometimes we lack. My fifth point is that while European elites can be arrogant, that does not excuse arrogance on the part of church leaders. It's not a good thing to denounce fellow Poles as Nazi ecologists. Even a few such intemperate comments leave deep wounds. Does that mean that the Polish church should adopt every liberal cause on the horizon? Some liberal religious groups have taken such an approach, and their pews are often empty. I don't need my church to be a second Greenpeace. If I want to, I can join the real one. Number 7, at the same time, a less defensive, more generous and gracious attitude for those who are marginal or even outside the church would be welcomed by many of the people that I interviewed. Some of the wonderfully creative people I met do not fit the traditional mold, but they have talents and gifts reaching out to others. We should engage them. Finally, care for God's creation, properly integrated with care for all members of society, is about as Christian a vision as one can imagine. It certainly is more Christian than exaggerated nationalism and the commodification of nature. Laudato Si. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Professor Agliardo, for great speech.